We now live in a majority city. There's a significant number of African Americans, Latino, and Asians who now make up 50% of the department. 52% of the department live in the city of New York. The vast majority of members of the police force now live in the city of New York. Yes, it's true, there was a residency rule for uniformed officers that was passed by the PBA. And it was a deal that was struck in the 80s because at that time I was working for then Assemblymember Al Van, who opposed it. But unfortunately it was overridden by the then Speaker and members of the Senate, given the powerful support of the PBA in Albany. I believe in the NYPD. I have family members who are NYPD. And I don't believe that the vast majority of them are racist. I reject that. As a former public defender, as someone who believes in justice and someone who represents kids in this district and throughout Brooklyn, who's represented them free for 30 some odd years and knows the criminal justice system like the back of my hand, I know what these kids go through each and every day. I've given Know Your Rights seminars in churches and community centers all throughout the city of New York. But I still believe in hope, and I still believe in this city. But I also know that secrecy breeds suspicion, and I know government has the responsibility and the duty to make sure that things are transparent and accountable. So that's why I'm focusing on reforms. I do think there's been a number of protests all throughout the city, some constructive, some destructive. And I know it's because of the video cameras. And so I take credit for those cameras. And I know a lot of people said, well, you had Eric Garner, you saw what happened, so much for your cameras. Well, we would not be in this room but for cameras. We would not have this discussion but for those video cameras. And I think reforms are happening because of those cameras, and so we should expand that. We currently have 60 all throughout the city of New York, and we're moving forward to expanding it. I also believe that on January 29th, all of you should join me in Staten Island as we go to court on January 29th on Staten Island to unseal the grand jury minutes in the Eric Garner case. That's one thing you can do. Join me January 29th as I stand with the Legal Aid Society, ACLU, and the NAACP as we seek to unseal the grand jury minutes in Eric Garner. 2, training. The vast majority of police officers who are on the force now have been on the force for less than 12 years. The vast majority. And so all that they know is this quota-driven system. And so they need to be retrained from top to bottom. Because all they know is Commissioner Kelly and stop and frisk. Think about that for a moment. The vast majority of them have been on the force for less than 12 years. And someone just told me that statistic, a police officer recently, and I didn't think about that. That's an amazing fact.
It is.
When stop and frisk is drilled into your head, obviously we need to retrain them. I also think, I believe in community policing, but I also think when it comes to public housing, which is something close to my heart, having represented Ingersoll, Whitman, Farragut, Atlantic Terminal, Lafayette Gardens, and because I know most of the residents of public housing all throughout the city and have had forums all throughout the city of New York, I think removing housing police was a major mistake. And the consolidation of the housing police, transit, and NYPD was a major, major mistake. Removing housing police, because everyone in public housing says, I knew my housing police officer. I also think the PSAs are too large. PSA 1 in Brooklyn goes from Red Hook all the way to Coney Island. We need to make them smaller. But we also need to invest in public housing because we still have public housing where their lights in the hallways do not work.
Yeah, that's right.
I believe also that we talked about the criminal industrial complex, and all you have to do is go up I-87 and you see the prisons, and they come from 6 zip codes. And And so obviously the privatization of public assets, including prisons, are a major problem. But I am so happy that we are closing more and more prisons in the city of New York and in the state of New York. And the governor talked about that today. I hope that you will join all of me, another action item, me and the Attorney General Eric Snyderman, as we push for a special prosecutor in cases where there are police-related deaths. Because, as someone mentioned, because of the inherent bias in the relationship between a police officer and a district attorney. The governor today stopped short of appointing a special prosecutor. He wants to appoint a special monitor who will review cases and determine whether or not the grand jury, and whether or not there should be a grand jury. So we need a special prosecutor. We need to open the grand jury. We need more indigent counsel. We need legal aid needs more assistance. 18B attorneys need more assistance. We need community courts, one for Brownsville, one for East New York, and one for similar communities. Community courts. There's a whole host of items. We also need non-lethal uses of force. Police officers should not automatically go for their gun. There should be other non-lethal uses of force that can be used. I also believe, the young lady talked about the military type equipment. I too believe that that should be banned. There's no use for it on the streets of the city of New York and or any urban center. But I think above and beyond, we need to invest in our young people, and this is why I'm so happy that we're in Jack, because we have divested in young people in urban centers all throughout the city of New York. I often ask, whatever happened to the roller skating rings? Frank, what happened to them? Frank knows about them. Whatever happened to the bowling alleys? What happened to all the community centers? Now kids, all that they do is hang out on the street because there is no place. What has replaced them are these shiny condos that none of us can afford. Well, maybe some of you can afford them. I know I can. And we have, they no longer exist. And we need to invest in our people and young people and prevent young people from standing on the corner. There's a whole host of issues. I know that every institution in this society has been touched by our history. I want to say dark history, but I hate to use the word dark history because of the connotations, but because of our history of this country. And that includes, and it's not limited to, NYPD. But again, I do believe that discussions like this in the city and in the state should bring us all together. I think we've had some healthy protests and they're good. But I think now is the time to talk about reforms and resolutions and to and bring our city together and improve upon the progress that we have made as a city. And that's all that I have to say.